Now, there's been much discussion recently about Chinese hesitancy to breach Western sanctions against Russia. Supposedly, the Chinese rejected suggestions that Russians issue union pay cards, Russian banks issue union pay cards, and supposedly also they are going to slow down in supplies of microprocessors and high technologies to Russia, because that would also breach Western sanctions. Now, on the union pay card issue, I think almost certainly this is something that the Russians are intensely relaxed about and probably agree with, because when that was first floated by some Russian banks, the concern was at that point that there would be a financial crisis in Russia, so they wanted this connection to China as a backstop. There's been no financial crisis in Russia. The Russian currency, the ruble, is extremely strong. At the moment, the financial system in Russia is functioning normally, and more countries around the world are now accepting Russia's Mir card. At the moment, over the last few months, we've heard that Cuba, Iran and Turkey are moving to accept the Russian Mir card. So I think the Russians and the Chinese probably agreed with each other that there was really no need to press forward with the union pay idea. That can wait until later. But on the high technology products and all of that, well, I think that most certainly the Chinese are continuing to provide the Russians with chips and all of those things. And I should say that Russia imports most of its chips from China, though it is, as I said, it produces many more chips than I think people know about, and is undoubtedly intent on enhancing its own chip production capabilities even further. But whatever problems and bottlenecks have existed up to now, I think there is a political will on the part of the Chinese and Russian leaderships to overcome them, and I expect that over the next couple of months we will see that happen. Now, that's exactly what happened during the previous round of anti-Russian sanctions in 2014. There was a period when the Chinese businesses, Chinese banks hesitated to continue with some of their long-standing economic relationships with the Russians, looking for guidance from Beijing about what they should do, nervous about the impact of sanctions. Then the Chinese and the Russians got together at the political level, and gradually and purposefully these problems were then sorted out and trade resumed in ways which did not in fact lead to the Chinese becoming vulnerable to sanctions. And that's exactly what I suspect is going to happen. I mean, there'll be, I suspect, special companies, Chinese companies, set up to carry out trade with Russia. The Chinese Sovereign Wealth Fund will no doubt be active. One way or the other, all sorts of things will be done to circumvent any sanctions problems. And besides, I think that the Chinese, the political leadership in China, seeing the deterioration of relations with the United States, expects sanctions pressure to mount on China anyway. So here we see China now coming out very clearly and strongly in support of Russia. Now, this is a conversation between Putin and Xi. Xi Jinping is now apparently going to address the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Personally, he's actually going to give an address to it, though this will be obviously done from a distance. It will be a virtual address, but that apparently is now what is coming. So there will be further expression of Chinese support, a public expression of Chinese support for cooperation with Russia, despite the sanctions pressure. Now, to my mind, what this means is that the sanctions war is ended. The West has lost The Russians have already managed to pull through, and now the Chinese are reaffirming the fact that from their point of view, China and Russia are joined at the hip economically as well. So at this point, anybody who has any sense in the West should be saying, this has gone disastrously wrong. We're suffering appalling consequences. This is the moment where we call it off. Well, don't expect that. Don't hold your breath. Vladimir Putin laid out his principled assessment of the situation in Ukraine and the tasks being tackled during the special military operation. The Chinese president noted the legitimacy, note that word, of Russia's actions to protect fundamental national interests in the face of challenges to its security created by external forces. It was agreed to continue bilateral contacts both at the heads of state level and through various ministries and agencies. The conversation was held in a traditionally warm and friendly atmosphere. Note that key word, legitimacy. So according to the Russians, Xi Jinping told Putin that the military operation, the Russian military operation in Ukraine is justified and legitimate. It is in accord with international law. Now, that's the strongest words of support for this military operation than the Chinese have given up to now. However, this is the Russian readout, and perhaps the Russians would want to give a positive spin on things.